welcome to another delicious episode of Who Ate It First, a food history podcast. My name is Logan Runquist, and I hope you're hungry.
Also, I'm Kendall Runquist.
Woo! Hello. How are you?
Tired.
Okay. Well, I hope I can pep you up with this episode.
It's 10:48 p.m. right now for our listeners.
We don't always record this late.
So, no, we're normally better about this.
It's just sometimes it be like that.
So if my energy drops, it's probably because I fell asleep. So
I'm going to make sure he doesn't fall asleep. I have something to throw at him. I have some gummy bears that I'm going to throw at him.
Great. You get jazzed around this time. Like this is when you are most productive.
Typically, yes. I mean, tonight, yes, I am tired. But yeah. Normally, right now, I'm like, hey, let's party.
All I want to do is go to bed.
I can try to go as fast as I can. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
To take a ride with me?
Where are we going?
Well, we're going to El Salvador. So it's a bit of a trek.
You've been there before, but I haven't.
Yeah. You ready to go?
I'm ready.
Cool. Well, today we're going to be discussing pupusas. Have you ever heard of this word?
Only from you.
Only from me? Oh, okay. Nowhere else?
No.
Okay. Do you know anything about them?
I think they're like corn pockets of stuff.
Okay. Well, let's see if you're right. So just a little background. These are Salvadorian, as I said. And I had the pleasure of going to El Salvador when I was doing some mission work for our church. It was my first time going to Latin America, and that was back in 2018. So I went with a women's group, and we had a great time. So much fun. I did get to experience a little bit of San Salvador, the city, before we drove to the main area where the church was. And then we drove a little bit in a bus and went to Ilopango and Jiquilapa. So I was kind of in like 3 different areas. But El Salvador is beautiful. There's mountains, volcanoes, forest, jungle, regular city. San Salvador is just like any big city. It has buildings and restaurants and nightlife and all that kind of stuff. That was the first time that I had a pupusa, was when I was there. And it was on the school campus that we were volunteering with. The school is called Siloé, and it's a Christian school for kids ranging from elementary to high school, if I remember correctly. And one of our group members was from El Salvador herself, and she helped make them one day. So that was kind of fun. We got to like watch her kind of behind the griddle making them. So I remember eating them with a student. He was about to graduate, and he preferred to hang out with the older people in the group just because he didn't want to hang around like the little kids. So he preferred to hang around us. So we were like, hey, what's up? And he was showing us how to eat these. He said specifically, you have to eat these with your hands. You can't use any utensils. You have to eat them with your hand because it, quote, just tastes better, unquote. And I was like, okay. And they were very delicious. Let me get into what it is, first of all.
Okay.
So basically, it's a stuffed tortilla. You're correct. And it's a staple dish in El Salvador that can be eaten at any meal. They're made from thick corn tortillas stuffed with a savory or occasionally sweet filling. The fillings tend to change with the time of day. Sweeter ones are with breakfast. More savory are for lunch and dinner. Most common fillings usually involve beans, cheese, or pork, sometimes chicken, just kind of depends.
It's really interesting. I didn't know that you could have these for breakfast.
I didn't know that either. This information was coming from foodandarchaeology.com and also nuestrostories.com, the history of pupusas. So yeah, that's what their website was telling me, which was very interesting. So the exact origin of the pupusa is unknown, but some form of it likely goes back thousands of years.
What a surprise. Unknown.
I think it's just one of those things like this has been a staple food in a country for so long. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly how it started.
Yeah.
You know?
I've given up on that. I think all food is just unknown. Because a lot of this came about before recorded history.
Exactly.
So we don't know.
Exactly.
And I mean, I think it's kind of cool that a lot of this food has perpetuated throughout history, even before we kept track of that kind of thing.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, thousands of years ago, there was no written way of keeping track of that. There was barely written language back then. It was mainly spoken. I don't know specifically about Latin America, but maize was domesticated from a word that I can't pronounce 9,000 years ago in Mexico and gradually became a staple crop across the Americas. In fact, in Mesoamerica, maize was a large, if not primary part of the diet by 4,000 years ago. So people have been eating corn and maize for generations and generations and generations. This archaeological website has information for the domestication of maize. So if you're interested in such a treasure trove, they have that there for you. But for the Americas, maize was more than just a crop. Its production and consumption were linked to everything from religion to hierarchy to economic systems to political power. For many cultures, maize was even linked to the most powerful religious deities, such as the Maya maize god. This kind of transcends food, right? And I kind of love it when this happens in history. Like, a crop is so prevalent and it's just beyond food now. It's now taken on like a religious sort of icon. Is really fascinating to me. But so fast forwarding a couple thousand years, there isn't a ton of evidence around when pupusas as we know them were created, but it's believed they were created by the indigenous peoples called the People tribe, P-I-P-I-L. It looks like people or pipil, perhaps. And they lived in today's El Salvador over 2,000 years ago. Their pupusas were vegetarian, stuffed with squash, blossoms, herbs, and mushrooms. And also, if you're hollering at me saying, I've seen pupusas not in El Salvador, you're correct. They traveled a little bit to Honduras, and some people have seen variations of these called arepas in Venezuela or kind of other parts. And arepa is very close to a pupusa. So if you're hollering at me at home, hopefully that helped a little bit. But after colonization, and more so in the 1570s, meat began being used as addition to the filling. It could be pork, accompanied by refried beans or squash. This recipe would often include curtido, which is a tangy Salvadorian cabbage slaw / relish. And that tangy acidity sort of cuts through the meat and like whatever filling you have. Typically, if you go get these from a food stall or something, you'll get a pupusa, a side of relish, and a side of salsa, most likely. Instead of relish, they could be using the word slaw. Just kind of depends. Etymology-wise, the word pupusa comes from the pipil pupusawa, which in Spanish is translated, oh goodness, let's see if I can do this, popotlax, from another type of word. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher that one. And that means big stuffed tortilla. There we go. And thanks to elsalvadorinfo.net, the famous website, I got this information. There is actually a National Pupusa Day, and it is a holiday celebrated in El Salvador and the second Sunday in November. Y'all, it's coming up. We're setting this episode out so y'all can participate. I'm just kidding. I didn't know about that until yesterday. But municipalities all over El Salvador use this day to hold different types of events, but the best municipality to visit during the national holiday, Oloquita, I'm so sorry if I butchered it, and that town is known as the Pupusa capital. Another fun fact, in 2015, that same city was included in the Guinness Book of World Records for creating the largest pupusa in the world. The largest pupusa is 14 feet 9 inches in diameter.
Sweet.
And was made by the Alcaldía de Olaquita, El Salvador, on November 8th, 2015. You should see this picture.
How do you even cook something like that?
I don't know, and I'm a little grossed out.
Do you just buy like a 20-foot oven?
Here we go. To assemble the largest pupusa, 300 pounds of flour, 200 pounds of cheese, 10 pounds of the Loroco flours. I'll talk about those later. 115 pounds of beans and 80 pounds of pork were used. So I don't know. That doesn't answer your question of how to cook that.
Maybe they don't. Just there you go. It's raw pupusa.
I mean, I don't know. The picture that I'm looking at, it looks pretty cooked to me. Honestly, they might have just made just like a real big aluminum pan and made a real big fire pit and just put it that way.
Yeah, you'd have to do something like that, I guess. Can you imagine flipping that to cook the other side?
You can't flip it. Can't flip it.
Everybody push.
There are approximately like 25 people standing around this circumference wise. In meters, it's 4.5 meters in diameter if you prefer meters. I have to include this picture because it is fascinating and slightly revolting. I'm just kidding. We're all very proud of you. Congratulations on your largest pupusa in the world.
I hope you ate it.
I hope it was good, ? Anyway, that's pretty much the general overview of pupusas. For our recipe, we're using something that a fan sent us.
Oh.
Do you want to tell the people more?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and however else you prefer to define yourself. We got our first piece of fan mail.
Fan mail.
From none other than my first fan. My mom.
Aw, yay. So supportive.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. But I used it for this recipe, in fact. We received a book called Latinismo by Sandra A. Gutierrez. And it is a lovely repository of all kinds of Latin American foods, ranging from snacks, desserts, appetizers, breakfast, lunch, dinner, etc. She has lovely write-ups in each one. So I used her as a source for this recipe. We're going to be making the pupusas de queso because that's what I had when I was in El Salvador. So I'm really trying to recreate what I had. And I'll post a picture of what I had. Yeah. Anyway, and I'm going to attempt to recreate it. This recipe makes 4 to 6 servings. You're going to need 3 cups of masa harina. We actually got ours at Target. Just a little fun fact. 3 1/4 to 3 1/2 cups of warm water. 1 1/2 cups shredded queso blanco, Munster, or other melting cheese. 1/2 cup of soft goat cheese. We didn't quite use that. We are going to be using...
It was a vegan cream cheese.
Yeah, some vegan cream cheese because that's all we have in our fridge right now. Oopsie.
And we were trying to not kill ourselves.
Yeah, I also didn't want to go overboard on the dairy. And now this recipe states 1/2 cup of chopped loroco buds. And these are edible flowers that are found in Latin America. They give it an earthy flavor, but the book noted that we could sub with kale or collard greens. And so we are using some spinach.
Which is neither of those things, but
no,
we don't like kale.
I don't like kale. And then I asked Kendall what would be kind of earthy. I found out later that we might have been able to use artichoke, but that was from a different article.
Okay. Yeah.
But I didn't learn that until later. So I don't I'm not entirely sure about that one. I need to do a little bit more research. We're just trying our best here, folks, you know. You're also going to need half a cup of vegetable oil, some cortado de repollo. This is the slaw or the relish that I was talking about. Some people call it curtido. There's some spelling differentiation. And you're also going to need some salsa de tomato preparada or salsa Santa Rosa, just red salsa, kind of your choosing. The book references 2 of our other recipes. I got the curtido recipe from food.com, which is just curtido de repollo, El Salvadorian cabbage salad. Step 1, in a large bowl, combine the masa harina with 3 1/4 cups of the water and knead with your hands until you have a soft dough with the consistency of Play-Doh. Cover with plastic wrap or a kitchen towel and let the dough rest for 10 minutes. To see if it's ready, take a tiny piece and shape it into a disc. If the edges crack when shaped, add more water. If the dough is too soft, add more masa, just really small tablespoons at a time. Step 4, in the meantime, in a medium bowl, stir together the cheese and your loroco buds or spinach in our case, and do that until it comes together in a ball. Step 5, line a baking sheet with a damp towel. Heat a nonstick griddle on medium-high heat. Moisten your hands with some vegetable oil and divide the masa into 12 portions, patting them into 1/2 inch thick discs. Step 6, keep them covered with a damp towel to prevent them from drying out. And step 7, working one disc at a time, place 2 heaping tablespoons of the cheese filling in the center. Bring the outer edges of the dough up and over to enclose it. And step 8 is with oiled hands, roll the pupusa into a ball and then pat it again into a 1/2 inch thick disc between the palms of your hands, kind of like a slapping it back and forth method, exchanging it in each hand. Repeat with the remaining dough. Step 9, place the pupusas on the griddle and cook until they are golden with brown flecks or little brown spots, about 4 to 5 minutes per side. Step 10, transfer the finished pupusas to the baking sheet and cover them with the damp towel to allow them to steam and become tender. And when you're all finished, you can serve with your salsa and your slaw. Let's go try to make these.
Let's do it. All right, what'd you think?
I think I did bad again. It's not that they were bad.
Well, okay, so you had them from El Salvador.
Yeah.
And then we've just now made them and had some.
Yeah. Oh, I've had some at Gloria's too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying like
Okay.
I've had them a few times.
Okay, before we get into that, from El Salvador and from Gloria's, how authentic is Gloria's?
Pretty darn authentic.
Pretty darn.
Yeah. Because they are a Salvadorian cuisine restaurant. Now, they're a chain. If we want as authentic you can go without booking a plane ticket, there's about 15 different small pupuserias around Austin, actually. And they all have like crazy high reviews. They look really good. So I'm just using Gloria's because I think they're a regional chain and I think most people know what it is if they haven't been. But yeah, I would say those are pretty darn authentic. You'd probably get more authentic going to a food truck or a food stall. But
I love that this is a thing that it's called a pupuseria.
yeah.
Like it's a thing enough that it has its own, like a taqueria, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, or a ponderia, like a bakery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same thing. But yeah, there's places that literally specialize in pupusas. Because again, like they're a staple food, right? Like they're used for kind of everything: snack, breakfast, lunch, dinner, etc. So yeah, all of that to say. Well, what did you think first? Having never had them, although you might have had a bite of one at Gloria's years ago.
Yeah, I've had them at Gloria's. It's been a lot of time since I've been to Gloria's, so I can't say I remember them.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think we needed some improvements.
I was also looking at my picture compared to these. Our flour was a totally different color.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know the recipe specified masa harina. Harina, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. But the ones that I had in El Salvador, like, so these are yellow. These are tinged yellow.
Uh-huh.
The ones I had in El Salvador were more white.
Okay. It was probably a different kind of corn that was being used.
Yeah. So I don't know if that contributes anything flavor-wise. I just found it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't the flavor that was the problem. So I don't think that had anything to do with my stuff. But I'll get into my stuff in a second while we continue talking about you.
I just did a bad. I think I made them too thick, and we didn't have enough of the cream cheese, and so it didn't bind the binder in the middle together very well. And so, like, my ratio of filling to dough was off, so it was just more dough than it was filling. And some of them were cooked all the way through, although I did take a bite of one and I feel like it wasn't cooked all the way through, even though I did cook it like 10 minutes total, like 5 on each side. Some I went a little longer. So I'm a little unsure why it didn't get cooked all the way. We had that griddle up to 400 degrees. They were edible. They were fine. The salsa we got was good. That slayed.
The salsa was actually pretty good.
That slayed. And
Target, who would have guessed?
yeah, seriously. And the slaw cabbage, I accidentally didn't use cabbage. I accidentally used shredded lettuce because I didn't want to shred a whole head of cabbage. That was my bad. And honestly, when I opened the bag, didn't even notice that it said lettuce. Just saw the word shredded and went, yep. But I think it still tasted good. You can disagree if you want.
The slaw?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You can disagree if you want. I think it still tasted like a slaw. I remember distinctly having that in El Salvador, and that tasted very similar. I feel like this recipe had more spices, though. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
I'm sad, and I feel like all of El Salvador is mad at me. I had high hopes because I haven't eaten these a ton. I've had them a few times. I had relatively high hopes.
It's all right. It was your first attempt to make them, so I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about it.
I am already. too late.
But I'm about to beat you up about it.
What?
I'm just kidding.
What? Oh.
I'm just kidding. No, I mean, like, I'm gonna give my critique, but not to say I don't love you, and I don't think you're a bad cook. I think this was just not your best moment, I guess. I don't know.
I followed the instructions, though.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's not entirely your fault. So, we literally just made this, so I've been having thoughts kind of swirling around my head. But I think some of the missteps that we took was initially with the dough, we put in the water. We put in all of the water.
It said to, though.
I know it said to. We put in all of the water and the flour, but I think what we really should have done is put in only some of it, see how it is, put in more if we need it, see how it is, and iterate on it more instead of just putting all the water. Because then what we had to do was it was too watery, so we had to put more of the flour in. And that, I think, ended up increasing the amount of dough that we had, which is why all that dough was a lot thicker.
Oh, that's a good
Because
point.
we had a whole lot more flour in there than you originally needed.
That's true. That's a good point, yeah.
So that's why they were a lot thicker. That's why they probably didn't cook all the way through, because they were thicker. And we just ended up with like big chunks.
Some of them are smaller.
Yeah.
But some of them were big.
So I think that was problem. Honestly, that was maybe the main problem. And then, yeah, the filling, like you already mentioned, we didn't have enough of a binder, so it was hard to put the stuff in there. Since we were swapping out the spinach for the flowers.
Yeah, those Loroco buds.
You didn't actually measure that. You just kind of eyeballed it. And I think we actually needed more spinach. But
I think
also,
we did too.
since there wasn't enough binder, it was hard to tell. So I get that.
Yeah. In order to make the spinach work, I would have had to have chopped it so fine or used a food processor.
Yeah. Or just had more binder in there so we could have like actually kept the pieces together.
Maybe.
Which is what we were missing. We didn't have enough of that binder. So, yeah, I think just the misstep with how we handled the dough. And then just that, yeah, there was way too much dough to filling ratio.
I'm so sorry.
I think that was really it, honestly. I think that's actually the only thing is just the dough to filling ratio was off. And that's it. The first bite I had, though, I was so hungry because it was like really late. So I was like, these are so good. And then the second bite, I was like, actually, now that I've had the first bite,
I'm so
and I'm not hungry.
sorry.
I'm not so sure about this.
I feel so bad. Like, y'all, I can cook. I can read.
Yeah, you
I
can.
swear, I play fast and loose a little bit with seasonings, I guess. But like,
You don't always measure.
No, but like I measured the masa just like you taught me.
Hmm?
Like you were watching me. I did it just like how you do flour when you're baking. Like
Yeah, no, you did that right.
I did it right. I followed all the instructions.
Yeah.
I swear.
Yeah, I know. And I'm not saying that you didn't. You did follow the instructions. But I think the instructions failed us, I guess is what I'm saying. Maybe it should have said like, don't put all the water in it all at once. Yeah, and I should have thought about that because flour, when you're creating a dough, like it's always different. It's never the same. So you really want to not just go whole hog and dump everything in there at once.
Oh. I don't bake. I had no idea.
Yeah, I should have thought about that, but it was late and I wasn't thinking. So I could have prevented that probably, but it's all right.
I don't bake because of stuff like this. That's ridiculous. If I'm making a dough, I should have an instruction and it should work every single time. That's ridiculous. Like that's what I dislike about baking.
Yeah. And honestly, I can't give you an answer because I actually don't know myself, but I'm sure it has something to do with just the flours is just different every time. In tiny ways that end up you having different results every time that you might put the same amount of water, and one time it's perfect consistency, another time it's too watery, other times it's just not enough, So you have to be really careful about that. But so I think it was it. Then we tried to recover and ended up with just too much dough.
That makes sense. Honestly, we shouldn't have used all of it. I didn't even think about that. I literally didn't even think about that. I was just like, oh yeah, it says cut into 12. Okay.
Yeah, so let's use all of it.
I literally did not even think.
Yeah. I
guess I was tired too, but I wasn't even considering that to be an option.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's right. So anyway, yeah, that's why I was thinking, or why I mentioned, I wasn't thinking about that at the time, but now I've had time to like sit back and think about it while I've been talking. I think that's really the big thing was that initial step probably cascaded down and caused the other issues that we had.
Ugh.
And just not enough filling. But obviously we didn't have enough filling because now we had too much dough. So there you go. That's my thoughts. But I think knowing that.
What do you rate it?
Well, first off, I think knowing that were we to go back and make these again and correct those mistakes, it'd be a lot better. So with that in mind, for this one, I'd rate it a 4 out of 10. But I think it could be a lot better. And
we're going to go to Gloria's tomorrow and we're going to order some and I'm going to try to make myself feel better.
Well, and I was going to say like these are super easy to make, right? It took us a while because like the grilling or the griddle part was the longest part actually.
Yeah, 4 to 5 minutes per side was the longest amount of time that you spent doing anything.
Yeah, half of the time that we spent was, maybe even over half, was actually just standing there waiting for them to cook.
Yeah.
So they're really easy to make and put together. So honestly, like we could go back and do a second attempt in the future if we want to, because it's really easy to make. So I definitely recommend people try these. Just keep those things. This is why we do this, right? Like, we attempt the things and then we can relay that information and hopefully give y'all some guidance about how our first attempts went, so that if anybody else is having or trying it for their first time, they can take the advice that we give you so that your attempt comes out better.
Yeah.
And that's why we do this. And I just like to eat food.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, false. We just like to eat food.
Yeah. I just like food too. But also, it's just a fun way that we can both give you the history of the food and hopefully give you some advice if you ever try it yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll just say a 4 out of 10 for our attempt. That's kind of how I've been going about it this season. Is I'm not rating pupusas a 4 out of 10. I just want to clear the air with that one. I don't think pupusas are a 4 out of 10 food. I'm rating our attempt at making a pupusa at a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, for sure.
All the foods, if I had them from truly authentic people making them, I'm sure they would all be 10 out of 10.
But yeah, our attempt is not reflective on how good they are as a food.
Yeah.
Because they are very good. Okay, I'm going to go cry now.
Right. Yeah, I didn't have anything else.
Okay.
All right, well, that is going to do it for this episode of Who Ate It First. Just as a reminder, we are still asking everyone to share our episodes so we can hit our listener goals. We haven't hit any yet, so I'm hoping that we'll hit some soon.
Don't you want to listen to us throw pies at each other? Sure you do. Send it to your friends.
Yeah, don't forget, you'll get to see our beautiful faces on video, or if you prefer podcasts, listen to us throw pies at each other. We have a bunch of other fun content that we would love to make and share with everybody.
Blind taste testing, always fun.
But we're not going to get that until we get those listeners. So, once again, the first episode of this season, we're looking for 20 listens. The second episode, and then we go up by 5 every episode. So with this being episode 4, we are attempting to get 40 listens, which is quite a bit.
That's a lot.
So,
but not really. If one listener shares it to one person at their work.
Yeah, if one person shares it to 2 people and those people share it to 2 others, and then those share it to 2 others, and then you got yourself a classic Ponzi scheme, a classic pyramid scheme, and then, there you go, and everybody benefits, but mostly us.
Did this just become like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
I don't know what that...
You don't? Oh, well, there's this theory online called the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, and it says that every person on this planet is just 7 degrees away from Kevin Bacon. Which is very funny. So a lot of people, they'll go through their friend list or their family list, and they're like, oh my gosh, actually, wow, I do know Kevin Bacon, and it's seven people away from me.
I need to
my cousin knows so-and-so and so-and-so, and they work in this industry and so-and-so, all the way to 7, and wow, there he is.
I need to do that now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go... Next episode, I'm going to tell you if I'm 7 degrees from Kevin Bacon.
There you go. Oh my goodness.
All right. Well, that'll wrap it up. Yeah, anybody you can share this podcast with. If you like what we do, please share it with friends and family. Leave us reviews. If you listen to Spotify, we've actually been adding some, like a question at the end of our episodes as well, that you can access on the Spotify app. And yeah, follow us on Instagram too. We post all of our videos and pictures of the food that we make. So definitely go check that out if you want to see the stuff that we make.
Woo! These look better than they tasted.
And our Instagram handle is the same as the podcast. So it's at Who Ate It First.
Who Ate It First.
And that'll wrap it up. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.